Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. It is great to be back after another week of fun. And you thought that we talked about the championship final and that would be it. But there is still Super League going on. There is still free agency going on. There is a whole lot of things going on. And we are always here to chat it. John, how are you?
Doing really well. I think you're right that the off season is a myth, does not exist. Like we're grinding throughout the calendar. So excited to talk about was what was actually a busy week.
Very busy week. Before we get into it, obviously, we're going to thank our patrons in just a moment. But if you're listening to us and you are someone who consumes our content on Twitter, I want you to know that we are on Blue Sky at the USL Show. And we are still going to post the same content across both places. Basically, I am just copying and pasting, sending both places. But eventually, we will be transitioning to Blue Sky almost only. And the reason being is because links get your account pseudo blacklisted. If you keep spamming links like the YouTube link or the Spotify links, Twitter's algorithm does not send it out to the people and ends up not posting your content in general out to the people, even without links. So for just keeping the USL show growing, Blue Sky seems to be the better avenue. We're trying to figure out if Instagram's a thing. I don't know how to do Instagram. If there are any content creators who know how to really do Instagram, please let me know. But if you aren't following us on Blue Sky, please check it out. And because if we want to keep growing this thing, Blue Sky kind of looks like the way forward. So check us out there. And check us out on Patreon, and go ahead and thank Mad Mac Peel, Timothy Meadows, Andrew Towsley, All of the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NFResh 30, Tim Knox, Rian Macara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Aaron Che, Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you so much for supporting us. As always, we really appreciate you. So, let's go ahead, kind of get into some news, and we are going to go through some different orders. First thing, it's going to be kind of a quick hitter, but Jackson Corey of South Georgia Tormenta was transferred to Tacoma Defiance, which is USL Heritage, of course. But I mean, good stuff out of Tormenta, who continues to sell talent, who continues to do the fun stuff and not blocking their players from prospering. And good for Jackson Corey, that has proved to be one of the best players in League One. Everybody kind of knew he was going to get a move up. And yes, some people are going to say it's MLS Next Pro, but I think it's pretty clear with it being a transfer that the Seattle Sounders have some kind of idea for Jackson Corey in the future.
Yeah, I mean, just to hit on that last point first, if you're the Tacoma Defiance, you're not paying a transfer fee for a player that's going to just sit in MLS Next Pro. That's not to say he's going to be a contributor for the Sounders immediately, but this is somebody who they see the potential in. And I think if you've watched him play for Tormenta, you probably have that same indication of what Jackson Corey can be. Honestly, he had something of a down season in League One this year. I think only 1 assist and no goals in the league. I kind of chalk that up more to a Tormenta team trying to figure things out, often changing systems between back four and back three. Corey himself played more on the right than the left, which is a bit of a departure for him stylistically. But the talent still shone through, whether it was at wingback and the dribbling he provided there, doing more attacking-minded things as a winger. He's got a very complete skill set, and it's the reason he's got international caps for Lebanon. It's the reason he's drawing attention from a team like Seattle/Tacoma. So big for him and big for Tormenta to be able to pull something like this off.
Before we move to the Super League, a couple of other things. Our favorite kind of transfer and undisclosed transfer is, of course, what happens here. You're going to hear people say things through the grapevine of they paid this, they paid this, they paid this. It doesn't really matter. Tormenta got money, even if it's just a few $1,000s or if it's $100,000, money is money, right? Especially when you're at this level, $100,000 or even $15,000 goes a long, long, long way. So they got paid. And I have a question for you, and it is, if you're a young player out of college, or if you're a young player trying to find your way, and saying young player because Jackson Corey was a young player of the year finalist, or did he win it? I don't remember.
Finalist in 23, I want to say.
I
Yeah.
think you're right. And we're talking someone 23 younger who's trying to make it as a professional. If you're someone who did not start off right at an MLS or USL championship level as a starter, why would you not go to Tormenta, who has proved to develop talent and not just send it to USL championship, to MLS itself? Why would you not just go straight there?
No, and even somebody like a Keziah Sterling who came through the Tottenham system couldn't really figure it out in the English lower leagues, if we're being serious, and then grew his game in Tormenta, got the move to the championship. This is a club that no matter where you're coming from, I'm even thinking about somebody like an Ajmir Spengler who came in from the college ranks this season, broke out. Like, Tormenta has an eye for talent, and if they're coming to you, that's a sign of your quality. But if you have the opportunity to go play for them, it's an atmosphere where you're going to develop, grow your game, and get the chance to move on to bigger and better things.
By the way, kind of speaking of Keziah Sterling, Backstick Pod, which has Jamil Roberts and oh my gosh, who else is it? It's another USL guy, and I'm just so anyway. It's the Backstick Pod. They did an interview with Keziah Sterling, which is just players talking to players, which is always fun, especially at the USL level. So check that out. So let's go ahead and move on to the Super League, where this week we had really one game that looked on paper like it was close, but I do want to start off with the Sun versus Dallas game because I mean, first off, we talked about it on Blue Sky. The band was just right up my alley. Shout out to the whatever band that was at the Dallas Trinity game. It says 2-0, but if you watch that match, it was an absolute track meet back and forth. Immediately after the Trinity scored, well, I guess technically own goal, but whatever. They were showing the replay and they almost missed the Sun scoring immediately. It was that kind of game. 2-0 feels harsh to the Sun. I mean, it was an even battle that was really fun to watch. Just two attacking teams just going blow for blow up and down the pitch.
No, and Tampa Bay was in an interesting spot where started the year a little bit slowly, got some of their international players in and found their form. And then they had 21 days off before this match. And you could feel them shaking off the rust to a certain degree. I think this game, much as you're saying with the track meet point, was more open than Tampa Bay would maybe want in the optimal setting. But they had great ideas attacking wise. I thought the combination play between Carly Giamona and Sydney Nacello on the right, as it has been all year, was really a driver for this team. When they could get the balance correct in the midfield between Jordan Lister and Jade Moore in the pivot, that really gave them the structure they needed to kind of control the game going both ways. But Dallas is one of the best attacking teams in this league for a reason.
Yeah.
They know how to probe, they know how to be patient and find holes. I thought Rachel Pace, former Indy 11, was very strong at the left wing back spot, coming in for Chioma Ubagagu and providing a different profile, somebody who wants to cut inside, really kind of possess like more of a central midfielder, and that gave Dallas a presence they needed to break lines and work through. It's impressive stuff for Trinity, who have found their footing in this 3-1-4-2 shape. And getting a win over Tampa Bay feels like a big deal and feels like something that maybe cements Dallas as the number 2 team in the league right now.
Yeah, and one person that you kind of mentioned, the formation that Dallas is running with, right? I think the biggest person that you look at is the one in the 3-1-4-2. Brooks has been just a quarterback for this team. I mean, obviously, she's going to be your deepest lying midfielder, and a lot of people say that about their deepest lying midfielder. But the way she fills in spaces, defensively, the way she distributes the ball wide, the way she can play it through channels. I mean, she had a couple of those balls, especially in the second half, that the Sun were going for an equalizer, and she just thread it through a channel in those half spaces and really put the Sun under pressure. She was just doing that the entire game. And if the Sun ever went on the counterattack, she would just kind of win it back and do it all over again. Brooks was the player that really stood out for me. She was just an absolute blast to watch.
Cementing that trio of Brooks, Sam Meza, and Gracie Bryan in the middle has been a big deal for Trinity. Meza is the one who really steals the show with the dribbling and the creation. She's got a couple goals this year. But I think you rightly point out, Brooks is setting the table with the passing. She's good for 3 or 4 tackles a game as well, really a stopper between the lines. Such a key player. And I think another thing with Dallas was the balance at the back.
Yep.
When they've had their kind of rough patches, the central defensive group hasn't been as firm for them. Getting Hannah Davison back in the starting lineup healthy was a big deal. I thought this was a very strong performance from Wanaya Hudson as well. Someone who came in on loan a couple weeks ago, had her ups and downs, but she's an NWSL quality player, and she really showed it. Had the ability to kind of stretch up that right side on the ball a little bit as well. Just a really balanced performance from Dallas.
Also, just for really quickly on the Sun side, obviously it was they had their moments, especially at the very end. And kind of speaking of, if anybody has an update on Hendricks, by the way, can someone please let us know? Because at the very end of the game, she went for a diving header. Not only took the ball off the top of the head, which never feels good, she looks like she hit her head on one of the Trinity players' legs, and they appeared to stretcher her off. We never got full updates on that. So if anybody has an update on that, just let us know. Because it looked bad on TV.
I seem to recall her being able to get on the stretcher under her own power, but yeah, hoping for the best given that.
Let's move on, and I want to go to Lexington next. I know that Fort Lauderdale, Spokane is the closer match, which is why I want to talk about it at the end. Brooklyn versus Lexington, and what can we say about Brooklyn or Lexington at this point, right? This seems, if you look on paper, by paper, I mean the table, it says, oh, well, good team beat bad team. But I don't feel like that tells the full story, because I don't think Lexington has been as bad as their points total says. It just feels like they just don't put it all together all the time. They are not as bad as that record says. But I mean, Brooklyn still put enough pressure on Lexington to make it 3-0. Again, this seems to flatter Brooklyn, but also this seems to always happen to Lexington. So how often can we keep saying that?
Lexington is kind of an interesting proposition on the statistical side because their goal difference in actuality is twice as bad as their expected goal difference, but they've also still got the worst expected goal difference in the league. So they're a bad team, but they are playing much worse than you might anticipate. And I think Brooklyn, as clinical as they are, as organized as they are, was perfectly able to take advantage. Brooklyn really didn't mess with what was working. It was that 4-1-4-1 press, really aggressive, really able to shut things down in the wide areas and kind of funnel play into central traps. You got the interchange and the flow. I thought Luana Gravias showed a real sense of evolution up top for Brooklyn as well. She got that hat trick a couple of weeks ago, I think against DC. She's shown an ability to kind of stretch with her pace and transition. This was a game, especially in the second half, where she was willing to kind of drop between the lines, drift a little bit, really become more of a setup player in a way we hadn't quite seen. And it makes it make sense of why she was a Brazilian youth international, why she was why she was the first player to ever receive a transfer fee in the Super League. So big stuff from Brooklyn. Lexington, too many sloppy mistakes, a lack of structure when they turn the ball over, things that feel correctable. And yet here we are 17 weeks into the season.
I kind of have two things that just don't matter about this game, but I'm just going to throw them out there anyway. It's nice to see Sasha Pickard play well, another Alabama girl.
She
Watched her.
was so good in this game too, like absolutely dominant.
She was really good. She's always been great. It was nice to see her play well. Also fitting that someone with the last name Kroger does well in Lexington, Kentucky. I just want to throw it out there.
That's very good. One more note on the Lexington side, where
Yeah.
the commentators were mentioning at the beginning that Amanda Allen wasn't in the team and kind of no
Mhm.
one knew what was up. Allen's somebody who's been very bright for them on loan from Orlando in the attacking spots. Apparently went down with a season-ending injury, so recalled from the loan. Very tough for Lexington. I do think they have enough attacking talent to kind of make up the difference internally, but not what you want to see when you've got 9 points out of about a dozen games.
I mean, between Maddie Parsons, Autumn Weeks, and even like Hannah Richardson, they have enough. Like, I'm not worried about their attacking talent. And the what confuses me about Lexington is I've watched their center backs play.
Mhm.
I like what I see individually, but they don't seem to work as a pair. And I don't know what you do about that because you say the talent's there on both sides. Why doesn't this work? And I feel like that's how I feel about this Lexington team every single time I watch them. It's like this player is so good, this player is so good, this player is so good. You can go through the entire 11. Why doesn't this work? And it just doesn't work. It drives me insane.
I think Michael Dickey has probably set this team up to be a little bit too aggressive at the back. Like so often when you see a team try to break lines against you, it'll be your central midfielders who are making the rotation over to cover that player. Like Lexington has no hesitation to send one of their defenders upfield to close down. So then if you retain possession as the attacking team, there's an obvious hole, and we've seen that exploited again and again. Some of it, again, just comes down to bad luck. Like no bones about it. This team is underperforming expectation. They've had the worst statistical goalkeeping in the league as well, though I think that's probably unfair to Cox especially. But yeah, just a lot of things not quite going right for this team right now.
For Cox, I mean, I do think she's a pretty good goalkeeper personally,
Yeah.
just from what I watch. The second goal, I mean, that one just kind of hurt me. Like, she did everything right. She comes out fast. She cuts down the angle. She gets the save. And yet somehow, not only does it trickle in, it just curves back towards the goal. And I'm like, this is just Lexington, ancient horse burial ground or something. Like it's just, I don't know. It was just, it's hard to watch at times. And it's not even they're bad. It's hard to watch. I can ignore bad teams, right? Where it's like, oh, this is clearly a crap show. I can just turn this off and ignore it. I keep hoping for Lexington that things will get better. But Brooklyn is probably the worst team you could probably go against if you're trying to get right because, I mean, they are class right now. And I'm going to ask you a question after we get done talking about Fort Lauderdale versus Spokane. Fort Lauderdale, another one of those teams that has cemented themselves as one of the top three-ish teams in the league, while Spokane sits at the bottom. But do they really belong to be there? And obviously points would say yes. But when we're talking about how they look, how they play, it's a 2-1 win, but it was 2-0 up, and then they get sort of a last-minute goal where I don't know what the vision fully is for Spokane. I trust it, I think, but I don't know what it is. Fort Lauderdale, though, just keeps having awesome strikers and awesome midfielders and awesome wingers. And they'll figure out the defense kind of later because their goal scorers just keep scoring goals. There's something too, we'll just outscore you, especially when you're playing against a team like Spokane who hasn't quite figured out the shooting boots yet.
Yeah, I mean, kind of speaking to all those points, like Spokane, by the advanced stats, is in a dead heat with Brooklyn to be the best offensive team in the league, and their conversion rate is in the toilet. Like they just cannot get it done in front of net. Fort Lauderdale, on the other hand, a little bit mixed record by the numbers, but you watch this team play, you're impressed by the offensive patterns. And I think both in the win against Dallas 2 weeks ago and then in this victory, they've shown some real growth in terms of their defensive organization. I think Tyrone Mears was smart to move away from the back three and really go for more of a flat back four in the defensive zone, paying off for them, especially in a match where, I don't know, like Spokane can really beat you if you're giving them space out wide. Like Amina Ekic in particular, who still had a big game, but Mackenzie Weinert equally on the right side, are really players that can hurt a defense that isn't ready for them. And Mears' shape change didn't let that happen. Obviously, the headliner for Fort Lauderdale week in and week out at this point is Addie McCain. She's leading the league in goals. She's finishing completely amazingly every time she gets a chance. What impresses me is pretty much everything else she does in the game. She's the striker on paper, but so often she's dropping in, getting touches between the lines. You hear a lot these days about like a box shape in the midfield where you want three players and she drops in and becomes the fourth to complete that shape. It constantly gives Fort Lauderdale the edge they need in the midfield. And then she follows it up with the late runs into the box, constantly finishes the chances. Just a great design and a great talent identification on the part of Mears in this club to activate what she does best.
We mentioned that kind of box midfield. She does kind of complete that four. And the one player of the midfield that kind of feels left out and doesn't maybe get as much love as she does deserve. I mean, for me, it is Taylor Smith. She's technically on the other side of the double pivot, but it's not a proper double pivot. And it's a 4-2-3-1, but like not really, where she drops back and staying in front again, this flat back four where they should have enough defensive solidity. But really, you're just sitting back with five people and just letting the other four go. And you're on the double pivot, quote unquote, here with Felicia Knox. Just let her go up there and just distribute everything. Why not? It's worked so far this year. She's leading the league or second in the league in chances created. She's up there. And, you have Taylor dropping in and just really giving that back line just a little bit more, not even just comfortability, like that extra safety blanket. It allows that back line to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to get those tackles, trying to stop things immediately. Because before it was center back steps up and tries to make a tackle, tries to win the ball off. They get past and it's a one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Now they have a little bit more coverage to be more aggressive in the back line.
No, and you think about Smith, who really kind of took on that deepest role in the midfield, but she also was taking set pieces from both sides. Like she's got the technical skill that you can miss because she's willing to sacrifice for the team. And she also had a block and a clearance in the box, a recovery in the final third. She's doing a bit of everything, and it's easy to miss amidst Knox and McCain. All that energy you're getting on the wings from Shania Gordon and Jasmine Hamid. Really a lot of pieces here that are working well together.
Well, there's some that just got put into our chat. That was in the USL show Discord. Check that out. It looks like with Dallas, by the way, Sam Meza, who we just talked about, her loan is set to end in December still. So we will see how that changes for Dallas. This is all
Meza for me. I was thinking about doing a all league team type article when we're in the winter break. Meza would be one of the first names on the team sheet. That's really crazy.
Yeah, surely they fought to get that one back, huh?
If you're the Seattle Reign, I don't really understand the decision to not let her play. Like maybe she's impressive enough that they think, okay, let her rest. She's going to be in the preseason and really contribute. If not, the loan ought to make sense, but we shall see.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on unless you have any other Super League thoughts. Actually, just kidding. I remember my question. I have it written down. Right now, in my opinion, we have kind of three groups in the Super League. You have three teams who look like they are the real deal, cream of the crop. You have another few, like, I don't know, three who are kind of, they could be contenders, they could be not. We don't really know what they are. And then we have two that are pretty clearly at the bottom. And how do you kind of view the table right now? Do you view it as Brooklyn, Dallas, Carolina slash Fort Lauderdale, or because I think it's Carolina still at the top of those three, and then Fort Lauderdale, Tampa Bay, kind of fighting it out with DC, Spokane, and Lexington at the bottom, or am I kind of overlooking something?
I think there's an argument to be made that Brooklyn might just be a class of their own, frankly. Like they're one, Dallas, Carolina. I would push for Fort Lauderdale, honestly, to be in that B tier. But then, like, where does that leave Tampa Bay in the weird muddy middle? I don't know. It's a high parity league so far, which I think has been fun. Like, if Spokane rips off 2 wins in a row, suddenly they're in a playoff spot. That's what you like to see, certainly. As we're getting some nice little scoops from Anthony in the chat. But no, like you watch Dallas in a given week, you watch Fort Lauderdale in a given week, they instill more confidence in me than a team like Carolina. The table says otherwise, but that's where I'm at the moment.
Fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and move on. And I am going to put this in the chat, and I will put this into the description of this if you are in podcast players. But I am going to look at the USL Championship transfer tracker, and later on, I'll put the USL League One updater from Alex Ashton. He doesn't call it a transfer tracker; he calls it a roster update, I think. Either way, it's his version of the transfer tracker in the chat as well. But I want to kind of go through some of these big deals that have gone through. We've already last week we discussed Maxi was on the move, but it wasn't announced to the next day publicly, in the worst kept secret of all time, that he was going to Rhode Island. So on the USL show, and because you've given this opinion everywhere else, what did you think of Maxi Rodriguez to Rhode Island?
Well, first and foremost, Maxi Rodriguez is not overrated for whoever needs to hear that. Secondly, I think this is an absolute statement from Rhode Island. Like, there's an argument to make if you're dumb and cynical that the playoff run could have been a little bit lucky. By adding a player of Maxi Rodriguez's caliber to a midfield that's already coming back in full and is already stacked, you're coming out and saying you mean business, you mean to compete with Louisville City, you want to be the top dog in the East yet again. And Maxi, I think, really does add a different dimension for this team. He's creative in the same way as Zach Harivo, ostensibly, but I think there's a different style to the way that they go to work. Harivo tends to be a little bit more of a number 10 in Connor Smith's system. Rodriguez loves to get deep, pass from deeper areas, try to create overloads and build in a way that I think is going to be effective. He's got a bit of goal scoring in a way that no one on Rhode Island showed off in that central group. Everything about his game is high energy and passion and commitment. He really fits the system. He's a ridiculously good player. Like I can't praise it more highly, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like, wow, okay, this Rhode Island team, they brought the budget last year, and they are clearly showing no regrets because they're going to finish that stadium and they are going to put an all-star lineup on that field for the first time. I mean, just way to build to the release. I mean, come on. I mean, it's good stuff. We got good stuff from Anthony in the chat. How do we feel about Lou City returning basically everybody? Which that does include Kyle Adams with a new contract and Taylor Vila, who I already thought he was on a multi-year contract anyway, but he's on a new multi-year contract now.
Yes. There are a couple teams out there that are doing this just because they like can't help themselves and must put out an announcement to keep the fan engagement up, which is annoying for me as someone who's like trying to build a roster tracker, but whatever. But I mean, like, you look at the Lou City squad. This is a team that I argued was the best team in the history of the USL. I would still maybe argue that, frankly. By returning almost the entirety of the core, you're just going to keep that energy going. The only need right now is to find a goalkeeper and a little bit of depth in the central midfield. And then the expectation should be another player shield, and this time going on and winning the title. Like that core is impeccable.
Am I being too reactionary in saying that Taylor Davila was the best player on that team?
He would have been my number 2 vote for MVP behind Nick Markanek.
Well, that tells me everything I need to know. So, yeah, I mean,
Well, frankly, when they didn't announce him, I was like, oh, they're going to sell him to MLS. And
that's
then
what
no,
I
it just
thought.
turned out like they wanted to like get more PR by announcing a Davila extension, but that's how the
I
cookie
mean,
crumbles.
I would also like better PR. So if somebody over there at Soccer Holdings or whatever can send me just some free PR, that'd be great. Um,
Yeah, loop
so
us in with whatever you're sending to Benton, please.
yeah. Let's go ahead hit some others. Uh, Listen, Detroit is wheeling and dealing. They are having a good time. And did we get the first or is this the second former Sacramento signing in Vate that comes over from Sacramento? Because this feels like the first guy to kind of follow Dicchio from Sacramento. Maybe I'm forgetting someone, but
I know that I think maybe Victor Bezerra came through the system with some of the Sacramento guys, but didn't reach the first team before he came on
okay.
loan. But that's as close as I can get for you, I think.
I, yeah. So I mean that's a good pull, and then you have Donner who comes over, and I mean I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. He was playing right back for Monterey, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right
yeah,
back
yeah.
and right wing back on
That's
occasion.
what that's what I thought. I mean, way to shore up your fullbacks situation. I mean, it's not like it was a massive hole, but if you looked at that team, it did feel like the question mark a lot of times. I mean, Donner was one of the best, has been one of the best fullbacks in the league. He had a bit of a down year, but who didn't for Monterey, if we're being honest. Um, he's been consistent. He's as consistent as it gets, and I'm really interested to see how he fits within Detroit City. If he's going to be the backup or if he's going to be the nailed on starter as of now.
I feel like they wouldn't have made a transfer with Monterey if he wasn't going to be the starter. And rightly you say like that was a bit of a question mark spot for them at times between Matt Sheldon playing there, that desire to push Reese Williams a little bit higher up at times during the course of the season. Donor like literally has never missed a game in the history of Monterey. That's what 3-4 years at this point. Incredibly solid player, gives you everything you want there. When they signed him and Shane Wheat, I thought that meant Michael Bryant would probably be gone, and then they
Extension.
just got Bryant back on a 2-year extension today. So the defense is going to be incredible. A couple other things with Detroit too, with Carlos Herrera coming in at the
Hmm.
goalkeeper spot.
Another Monterey
Since
Bay.
another Monterey Bay. Actually, Herrera and Siaha signed within an hour of each other today, so Monterey lost both of their goalies immediately. But whatever, I don't want to talk about Monterey because I'll just be sad. But Herrera and Saldana being there means Nate Steinwasser is almost definitely out in Detroit.
I mean, the joke is that he was already their accountant anyway. So, I mean, he's going to have a job. I don't know. Um, do you think, and this is probably a better question for Detroit fans, but is there a world where he hangs up the gloves, or do you think he's going to move away from Detroit because he's always just been there?
You've got to think there's a USL team that would be willing to give him the starting gloves, right? Like the track record for Steinwasser has been so good.
Yeah. Got the question in the chat. Thoughts on Miguel Ibarra being the first ever signing for AV Alta, which, I mean, I'm just going to throw this one out there. Their team, I love a good long con of trying to really bring in the hype. They were at the airport for a long time, man.
Well, they waited so long that Naples beat them to a first signing, actually.
I want to ask you about that in a moment,
Yeah, we'll
but
get to Ibarra. Well, I mean, Ibarra, say what you will about 2024, where he only played like 200 minutes for the Independents. This is a player who was great in Liga MX, had a good tenure in MLS. When he was fully fit for Charlotte in 2023, I don't think there was a better passer, or at least a passer with better vision than Miguel Ibarra was. And that's a talent that I think can contain or continue on, even if the legs are a little bit beyond him at this point. Throw in the fact that he's a Lancaster guy, he's got the local connections. This is what every club should aspire to for their first signing. Someone with national team caps, local ties, and the talent to make an impact on the field.
Which perfectly ties me into Naples, where they have their first signing. And you mentioned a lot of teams say our first ever signing, it's a guy who was here, it's a guy who's from here, he knows the area, or he's been with the coach forever, or whatever, right? He flew over here one time. Uh, Jaden Owen, he's from England, has seemingly no real ties to Naples. I mean, he's a great young talent, and it's to me personally, it signifies one of two things. One, they want to make him a cornerstone and sell him because he's that kind of talent. Or B, they genuinely think he's going to be here for the long haul for fans to really get behind because even though the first ever signing doesn't matter, it so does matter. And for this to be a guy with zero connections to the area that I'm aware of, it made it feel weird. But if you're thinking purely roster construction, it's a pretty good way to start.
No, he's a player who I think he had 1 assist and no goals across all competitions, less than 1,000 minutes last year. But the potential is so obvious when you see him play. I think creatively he's solid. He's got the ability to play across the attacking line. Even if he's not going to come out and like steal the headlines in the way Miguel Ibarra will, he's a solid addition for somebody that's trying to build a winning organization in this league.
And by the way, for anybody who is watching in the live chat, I am throwing in the League One updater, USL League One 2025 transaction tracker, where we got some stuff out of Greenville, some good stuff. We'll talk about all that at another point. There was some later moves that were all kind of brought in today, a bunch of them just being new signings or re-signings, not a whole lot of new stuff, but one really interesting one was Mele Malongo. And I know you say you didn't want to talk about Monterey Bay, but this was a really fun one from Chattanooga to Monterey Bay.
Yeah, there's a lot to dislike about what Monterey is doing in terms of the roster build. This is unabashedly a very solid signing for them. Malongo, somebody who's shown a lot of flexibility in an up and down and mostly down Chattanooga team. He's quick. He knows how to run without the ball. He's a solid finisher and an improving finisher as well. You've seen him grow in that facet of his game year in and year out with the Red Wolves. Is he ready to take the leap to the championship? That's going to be the big question. We've seen kind of a mixed bag with strikers making the move in the past, but it seems like Monterey is going to make him the guy, and he's going to have the opportunity to show off that talent at a minimum.
So let's kind of go through some other just fun signings, some new stuff that kind of came in. We went through a bunch of stuff. I want to kind of talk about one of the former goalkeepers, Siaha. This was an interesting conversation in the Discord. I think that this is a great move for Indy. I think that he is going to offer the same overall kind of production, the same style of play. It's very clear that the Indy coaching staff have a particular goalkeeper in mind. We want someone tall who can command a box and is decent with their feet. Seems like that's the kind of guy they want. And Siaha does that. He doesn't have the ceiling of a Hunter Schultz, but he doesn't have the floor of a Schultz either. I think Siaha is going to be someone who is going to stabilize that group just a little bit more and not give you the peaks or definitely not the valleys of a Schultz.
Yeah, because over the course of the Indy 11 season last year, when they were at their best, it was Hunter Schultz in absolutely terrific form over the summer. And I think a lot of the reason that they wavered as the year went on was that he came down to earth, probably even a little bit subpar. Siaha is somebody who knows the league. He's been with Monterrey and San Diego at this point. Not really somebody who's particularly good with the ball at his feet, but Indy doesn't need that. They want somebody who's just going to pump the ball downfield, And now, given that they've got a strike pair of Romario Williams and Edward Kiza, they've got two targets up there. That's the entire design of this team, is to play the ball up to them, try to get a knockdown, and let someone like a Bruno Rendon get onto the ball, and you're in business. I don't know if it's going to be the prettiest soccer to watch in Indy next year, frankly, but you can see the roster build having intention behind it in a way that's promising.
I mentioned this on Soccer Down Here, but I mean, I love the Rendon signing. I thought he was the top. Oh, I'm about to sneeze. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. I thought Rendon was the top fullback option on the market in general this season. There were other good fullback options, don't get me wrong, but when we talk about just potential and what he can be on top of what he already is, there's not many other fullbacks that I could really circle and say, hey, this is the guy if you're trying to really reestablish a fullback position, specifically a right back spot in the league right now.
Certainly in terms of players that you could point to and say, like, yes, we know for sure they're confirmed to be a free agent. Like, that was the obvious pick of Rendon, was top of that class. And yeah, I mean, Indy, and I read about this a bit on Substack, was a team that got absolutely no production from right back for the majority of the year. Yunus Budati, who they sold after a couple months, got a couple assists early in 2024, and then there was just nothing creatively. Talk about a difference when you bring in someone like Bruno Rendon. Electric with the ball at his feet, makes runs like an attacker, and can play on the wing if you need him to. He's very underrated defensively as well. Like, knows how to use some of that electric physicality to get back, get in good positions, hard to dribble past. Really the complete option you need at right back, and a statement signing for Indy 11.
I'm just going to kind of go through a few more of these, but as I kind of just look through and just see what's interesting, I do want to go to a question in the chat. Who would you like to see take over for San Antonio? Any odds favorites? I'm going to kind of go to the first part of this. Who would I like to see take over San Antonio? I mean, I feel like it's just because he came on the show and he was very nice to us and he's very good. Boy, does Ayman Zayed interest me in what's already a current San Antonio build.
I hadn't considered that before. That would be an unbelievably good fit for that team, because Marcina Ball, when you think about it, it was a lot of high pressure. It was a lot of long passes from the back and build. Zayed is less doctrinaire about the pressure, but he's somebody who prefers that longer style. And he prefers it where you're possessing at the back, patiently drawing the defense up before you get to it, in a way that suits the talent on this roster. Like, Mitchell Tainer hasn't got the chance to show that he's very good with the ball at his feet. Someone like Jorge Hernandez, who still put up unreal stats last season, has the capability to be even better than he was within the context of that Marcina game style. Zayed is, I mean, somebody who I rate incredibly highly as a coach and would be a stunningly good fit. So kudos for that shout out.
Yeah, cool. As for odds on favorite, I mean,
so my theory is that they are gonna look for somebody coming from the FC Dallas system. A year ago, they brought in Marco Ferruzzi as the sporting director, somebody who was at Dallas for years and years. The problem is that, like, Eric Quill just took a different job. Pamudo Ka just took a different job. So some of the North Texas kind of guys are off the market. A name to watch, just completely pulling it out of nowhere, is Michelle, who you may remember from Rayo OKC and Miami FC, who's now on the Dallas staff. A lot of teams in the USL are kind of looking for younger coaches who aren't that far removed from a playing career. Speaking other languages is always a plus. Somebody to just keep in mind if I'm absolutely pulling from nowhere.
Cool. Well, let me go ahead and I'm just going to drop in just my own club, because why not? I feel like the one that kind of shocked the most people, including myself, is Ronaldo Damas to Birmingham Legion on loan with the option to buy at the end of the year. I have my own opinions on it, but I do want to hear yours first.
you could point to a couple of things. This is the problem for Birmingham last year, if we're being honest, but finishing was the easiest one to pick out and the most obvious problem with this team. You want somebody who can finish chances consistently and do it when it matters in the playoffs. Ronaldo Damas is that guy. Getting him on loan with that option to buy is a huge deal as well. Like, so often it's just been loan after loan to various USL teams for him. If you're Birmingham, being able to cement one of the top 5 strikers in the league for potentially 2 or more years is massive. He's very good on the break in a way that I think Legion strikers haven't been traditionally. So much to like about this, and I think he's really somebody that lifts this team up in a major way.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking about it when you look at a Dawson McCartney, a Taborteka Preston, a Tyler Pasher. They were really speedy guys who, could create the counterattack very quickly, but then the person in the middle just wasn't that. You do have that with Damas, and the more and more of the film I watched, his runs were just so creative. The way that he would just find pockets of space between defenders and just end up in places. And I didn't realize that how much of a target he was for just in air crosses. I'm not saying it's a small guy, but he just doesn't seem like the target forward. But it felt like a lot of times for Colorado Springs, and when he was with Orange County, it really felt like, hey, we have these guys who can, it's like we can just cross the ball into him and he will make it work. It doesn't matter how we do it. He's going to make it work. And Damas does. He led the West in shots. Came second in goals in the West. And that's something that Birmingham kind of needed. They didn't have like a real person and conversion wasn't their friend, but taking shots wasn't either. Right? Like they just did not just take a ton of shots. Damas is willing to shoot from literally anywhere. One of my favorite clips that I kind of put for my film study. He took a diving.
Go check out Kayler's film study. Very, very informative if you want to know more about Ronaldo Damas.
Appreciate it. He took a diving header from 20 yards away, which is just hilarious. That's just kind of who he is. Someone who's literally willing to shoot anyway, anyhow. You just don't see a lot of those guys, not even just in the USL, but really anywhere.
Looking from my perspective at this Birmingham team, I think a right back, right center back is kind of the obvious big need. Do you is there any talk of Dodson coming back? Are there any names floating out there or anyone you'd prefer?
I would prefer Stephen Payne, purely because he's a Birmingham guy. I just keep throwing it out there. Also, just think he's a good right back. Sure. But Dodson, I think, is interesting. I thought he did not have his option renewed, but somebody has said that he has not been protected by Minnesota, which means he's still on the team, which means I just have no idea how MLS rules work, and I refuse to learn. And so I don't know. I don't really know what the plan is for right back. Center back, I do think there's a ton of options out there. You could get someone young and get someone older. I think that's going to be okay. I think the first order of business is going to probably be getting back Rita Zaire to fill in that number 10 spot, especially with Matthew Corcoran. He had his option exercise, but it's purely just so they can sell him. Like they picked up his contract so they can sell that contract. So
Dodson did get his option declined, so he's a free agent for real.
Okay, he is. All right. Because I thought so, and I don't know. Just reading tea leaves here, I think that Legion and Rita Zaire are in contract negotiations because
they didn't post his name in the loan ended in the roster announcement, right?
Correct. Despite the fact that his option was also declined. Yeah, just tea leaf stuff. It may end up being nothing. He may not come back, but I at least think the negotiations were happening.
Trying to figure out the status of players by what weird bucket they're in a roster announcement is kind of my favorite game. Like Greenville today, where very specific on almost everybody, and then Liam McKinnon's contract has expired. That means something.
It does mean something. I don't know. That is I the one team, oh my God, Rhode Island. Can everybody just do what Rhode Island does for roster announcements?
Rhode
Please.
Island, Detroit, Tampa Bay, all three of you killing the game with the specificity.
Just that you know everything and there's no questions. I can read it and I understand it. It's awesome.
And I think we are just down to North Carolina, Hartford, and OC that haven't done their announcements yet. And OC has been trickling out
Hartford
names. They've not gone the full thing. Hartford,
Hartford did do their announcements.
yeah, that's,
They
oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah, they did theirs because there's a couple of names on there that were a little bit shocking, but this is honestly the biggest returning class I've ever seen for a Hartford team. Normally it's everybody is gone except for like two people. So
It's good to see. I think this team needs a defensive refresh in a way that they don't look like they're about to do. But hey, they've got a long off season.
I mean, how much is it going to help Hartford in this offseason simply having the same coach for an entire calendar year?
Enormously. I mean, I think that's a huge reason why the quality of play has improved in the USL and why they've been able to attract better players. Is consistency on the sideline, consistency for players getting 2-year deals. For a team like Hartford that has been such a revolving door to return probably 8/11ths of their starting lineup, give or
Yeah.
take, massive.
Then you also have going through, you kind of mentioned Orange County, where they end up bringing back Zubek, which, yeah, obviously, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Definitely need to do so.
Yeah, Zubek and Shuttler are the two that they're back there, I think.
Yeah.
And Shuttler
So,
is great. I think we didn't give him enough love as somebody who really improved in goal for them last season.
oh yeah, I mean, he started off the season by scoring a goal and then got weird and then got really, really good. There was a stretch where you were kind of like, is Colin Shuttler or is Hugo Faru the best goalkeeper in the league right now? Because neither one of them could just concede a goal. They just refused. And then, they kind of went back to their level, which was still both of them top 10 goalkeepers in the league. But it was like these two both improved massively this year.
We never think about goalies in that conversation of like most improved player, but I think both of them had a real argument. And Faru especially for me, like such a complete game in Loudon from him.
I'm just looking at your transfer tracker, which, by the way, again, that will be in the description. I totally forgot that Tyler Freeman ended up there. I don't even remember when that happened, but it did.
Played one game at like, and I thought he could actually be an impact player for them down the stretch, especially when they had that injury to Beckford. And then they just did not play him.
I I don't know. I remember I thought he was going to be a superstar for Loudon. I thought he was going to be legit the next big thing, and then he just, yeah, I don't know.
So pivoting a little bit, where are you
Yeah.
at on Lexington, where they've got Lancaster and Juve and Yannick Yankum, Lucas Stauffer coming in, and now Elliot Goldthorpe, the Terry Boss hiring as well, which I'll get into in a minute, but I really like. Where are you at with Lexington?
Yeah, I do like the boss hire. Stauffer is one that I really, really like. He is someone that I think El Paso fans said it best. In the stats may not look great, but there's zero question that he's going to grind out every single 90 minutes. He is just a grinder. Like if you're a hockey fan, he is the definition of a grinder type player, which they were kind of missing last year. Goldthorpe is a guy that really tore up MLS Next Pro last year. I really like that signing as well for Lexington. It feels like it almost feels like they fully wiped away last year's roster build. It feels like it was just yikes, we'll never do that again, and just completely clean the slate. In terms of a breakup with a coach and a philosophy, this seems as clean as it can be. And coming into a new league, I feel like they're starting it off the right way you can, almost like an expansion team that had a slight head start.
I was going to make that exact same comparison where You can kind of feel them coming with that Rhode Island-esque model. I think Terry Boss is such an interesting hiring as well because the crux of his experience has come in the college ranks. Like he had a year as or 2 years as an assistant in Austin, but other than that, it was him being the guy at Oregon State. And he took an Oregon State program that was traditionally a pretty mediocre, like sub tournament level program, turned them into a national powerhouse, consistently put players into the pro ranks, stylistically very forward thinking and progressive in terms of kind of changing shape between phases of play, not afraid to like push her right back into the central midfield, kind of Man City style. If he brings that to the table and the press that he showed off at Oregon State, what a difference it's going to be from the frankly kind of boring soccer we saw from Darren Powell's team last year. And I think we're seeing this club continue to invest and give him the talent he needs to do the job in the championship.
I keep mentioning the USL show Discord, but I'm just going to kind of throw it through there. There was conversation. This is not me being like, this person's idiot, this person's whatever. That's totally not what I'm doing here. But there was conversation of like Lancaster, like is this who you want to build this team around? And honestly, there's much worse team or worse players you could build a team around. Cameron Lancaster is still a poacher's poacher. He's a finisher's finisher. He always ends up with the ball on his head or at his feet in those pivotal moments. Even if he just ends up being your super sub that you put on for the last 20 minutes to win a game, he's going to win you the game more often than he's not. When he was getting his playing time and Lexington was actually being progressive with the ball, he scored, and not just once. He would score braces. He would do the big scoring output. He's only 32, 33, and he's not the same player he was pre-ACL tears, but his game has changed in a way that still creates goals. He's not someone that just relied on pace and he doesn't have it anymore. He changed his game, and he's still just as good of a striker for it.
And between Juve and Goldthorpe and presumably a number of other players that they're going to be bringing in, you've got guys that can be the second striker or create from the wide areas. Like Lancaster doesn't have to be the do-it-all striker that he was at times, and he's still got the goal-scoring instinct that's going to pay off. Even if that is in a slightly reduced role, he's still a player you want to have around, if only for the locker room presence.
Yeah, and I think that, again, Cameron Lancaster is going to be a guy that's going to have a job until he doesn't want one, because he has just the reputation of good locker room guy and good leader and just goal scorer. Scores goals when he wants. So he's going to be a guy that is going to be able to stick around for a long, long time. I guess the last thing that I want to throw out there, arguably the biggest re-signing, re-loaning that we didn't really talk about, Hanya going back to switchbacks might be their best piece of business they've done all off season already.
I kind of just presume that anybody who is back to MLS or MLS Next Pro after a loan is just gone. So to get a player like Yosuke Hanya, who for large stretches of the year was probably the best attacking player, or at least the attacking midfielder in this team. And he took a back seat somewhat down the playoff stretch, but I think that shows his maturity to accept that role. Whether he's on the left wing or the right wing, Hanya gives you so much verve as a passer, very good in terms of his first touch, really fits this system to a T. And obviously, the switchbacks are going to be in the market for a striker, but by retaining Hanya and some of the other players they've brought back, you already know the base is there to make another run like they did this season.
Well, that's all I have in terms of just kind of talking transfers and all that kind of good stuff. Do you have anything that you want to get off before we move on?
I feel bad about Oakland. I know you've got the kit, you're repping everything ahead of their Coliseum move. Returning 15 players and then bringing in Kai Green, Tyler Gibson. Like, the West is only going to get stronger. This is a team that kind of shook their way into the playoffs already. Green is a great addition in central defense. but they had a heck of a lot of good central defenders already. Tyler Gibson was probably the fourth man in the depth chart for Indy. And again, a player I adore, one of my all-time favorites in the USL, like no doubt about it. In the year of our Lord 2025, I don't know if he's the guy in that midfield.
Box to box.
Tyler Gibson and Rafael Baca together, like they could apply for AARP.
That's brutal. I'm trying to. So our good friend Jonathan Como, he does the Oakland Roots blog. He did kind of just do the pre-leak thing that he always does because he's awesome like that. Rafael Spingel, who is their Swiss GK, and decided to look up film because obviously, and
Sure.
if he becomes the same guy that his film says, and I don't mean just the highlights, I mean the full 90 film, he is such a massive upgrade on 2024 Paul Blanchett, who 2023 Blanchett was something special, but it just did not hold up. And I think if you put the same team in front of this new Swiss goalkeeper, Spiegel, I think this is a significantly better Oakland Roots team. There's still a lot of things that need to be done. There's still a whole lot of stuff that this club needs to do in terms of building out this roster. But getting sure hands in net is a massive step forward. Now you just got to get the bona fide goal scorer not named Dom Dwyer.
Well, I think the thing with this team is now I like the goalkeeper spot. I think Johnny Rodriguez can legit be the guy at the 9. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not worried about that. It's that midfield group where it's a lot of defensive minded players, nobody with creativity. I think the wingers are bad. You're losing Memo Diaz, who is really your only wide creator. It's just like a glut of players in positions that they're already strong at and not enough improvement around area up in the attacking positions. And granted, we've got so much offseason left, but they've got 17 players on the roster. If you're counting some of those Project 510 guys, I don't know. It just feels like this club needs a statement year as they move to the Coliseum. They need to compete because they're going to bring in new fans and you need to impress them with the product. I'm worried that the direction they're headed right now maybe won't do so.
I'm just trying to purely find a fit for them. And the first name that came to my mind, if he wanted to go there, was maybe a Joaquin Rivas. Older guy, fits the old man thing that they kind of have going on here. Probably would be one of their more affordable options.
You put him in the number 10 spot in that team and they're instantly better. Like, that's a perfect fit for what they're trying to do.
So I don't know. There's definitely still surefire USL free agents out there, which maybe that's a later episode. Maybe we try to find homes for these free agents.
Literally, we just take the Memphis 901 roster and assign them.
Oh, I mean, that'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
It actually would. Yeah, someone write that down.
All right, write that down. All right, cool. Well, how about that was our kind of final USL thoughts. So how about final thoughts for the night, John?
Yeah, the holiday season is just flying by for me, honestly. Like, it feels like Thanksgiving was yesterday. We're like 2 weeks out from Christmas Eve. I have been a potato generally. I've been writing too much, but I don't know. As Spotify Wrapped happened, I kind of went back to music of the year.
Nice.
And I realized I just like didn't realize that there was an Ariana Grande album, which one of my guilty pleasures. So shout out to Ariana Grande for releasing a whole bunch of bangers back in March that I'm discovering now.
Better late than never. Good for you.
I have not seen Wicked, so I'm not fully committed to the bit, but yeah.
I was told it's very, very good, if that means anything. So
yeah, no, people are saying it's good. I just not getting off the couch.
Fair. That's totally fair. Last Friday, this is just oh wait, no. I'm sorry. Forget about last Friday. Basically, I got sick last Friday. Out of nowhere, better now. I put this out on Twitter's Blue Sky, but I just need to share. a few weeks ago, I told you guys about the pumpkin rolling contest that stopped me from getting home. There is a tradition in the town that I teach in where they hide an elf around town, Smiley the elf. And if you find Smiley the elf, it's an elf on the shelf elf, you win $1,500 from the bank. They give you a check, you get $1,500. Okay. So they said this year, and it can go anywhere in the town limits. At one point, it was buried halfway in the infield at a baseball field. At other points, it was like on top of like a bush, and like it's been in a whole lot of strange places. Anywhere within town limits. Well, the mayor says this year's going to be a little bit different. Well, it went on. They put out 30 something clues onto Facebook, and the mayor realized no one was going to get it. As it turns out, people were not looking for Smiley the elf. They were looking for a key that opened up a safe, that opened up the door to Smiley the elf. But no one knew that they were looking for a key. And let me tell you, the backlash on every social media and the amount of outrage at City Hall over the rules being changed from an elf to a key was monumental.
That's unreal.
It's totally because I'm rewatching it right now, but it feels like a Gilmore Girls bit. I don't know.
I think Facebook is like the perfect place where you would just find dozens of people who are absolutely outraged by that.
Just they're fed up. They were like,
Terrific.
the rules said elf. I looked for an elf. There was no elf. Why would I take a random key I find on a sign? Who does that? Who takes keys? Like, someone's
Not
put that
me.
there for a reason.
I'll tell you what, I've got a total off-topic pivot as well. As somebody
Sure.
with familial ties to SMU, I was
Yeah.
sad about the conference title game, but very happy on Sunday about midday. How are you feeling as Mr. Alabama?
Genuinely do not care because, like, change your schedule to beat 6-6 teams. Like,
You know what? Fair.
whatever. Like, I think almost everybody that I've met in person has said, yeah, no, we didn't deserve to be in. I think that everybody who's angry about it either A, calls into Paul Feinbaum, or B, is just on Twitter nonstop, which are the same people. So
Fair.
although there is a local beat writer in Birmingham who always has a really fun job of just engagement farming. He writes the best clickbait articles of all time.
Is this
And
they should join the ACC thing?
oh yeah, this is Joe Goodman. He's a wonderful Birmingham Legion writer. He gets the clearance to write about Legion, and it's the best stuff you've ever read about Legion. But his day job is writing, should Alabama join the ACC? And oh boy, are the comments awesome.
That's just terrific, honestly.
I wish I had that kind of pull just to write something like that, just to know that I was going to get under everybody's skin.
Watching the response must be a joy for him.
Oh, I'm sure it is. But yeah, I think that's that for this episode. If you made it all the way to the end, John mentioned we are 2 weeks from Christmas Eve, which means in 2 weeks there will not be a live show. However, we are kind of planning some stuff, and we are going to try to have some content out for that Tuesday. So if you're wanting to listen to Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whatever, there should hopefully be better stuff for you, but it will not be a live stream because we are going to be traveling, family, or sleeping, whatever we want to do, just trying to recover. So thank you for understanding ahead of time. So thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate you. I know that the Championship League One offseason is here, but we still have one more week of Super League to talk about. And boy, are we excited to do it. And there will be a lot more transfer news. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have some fun. So we'll talk about it next week. And for the first and final time tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist Podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.